stars. Love this podcast. A bit disappointed that it doesn't come out every week. Yes, it does. Still great, though. Big love. Kiss. Thank you, Tommy, for your review on iTunes. And that's another excellent review. Another 5-star one as well. So thank you for that. Of course, if you want to leave your reviews, iTunes, ForTheFansShow.com. You just leave it in the ratings and review section. Welcome back then to For The Fan Show for listeners. And we're also going to start off with a question, a review and a question. First, though, let me introduce my co-host for today, Callum Keane. Keno, hello.
That's a clue. Hello.
Hi. Everything good?
One more exam to go, but yeah, so feeling pretty good.
Yeah, we asked on Twitter for questions, and I'm going to ask here. We've got one from, I think he's a big fan of the show, Joe F. Robinson on Twitter. He's asked, when is Jack removed from the show? Well, interestingly, that's today, Joe. Jack's computer, just before we started to record, is exploded the right word?
Yeah, the SSD has exploded.
So we may hear from Jack today. Nobody knows. So if he does enter at some point, then that could be exciting for all of us, can't it? But
it could be a bonus, or it could send the show downhill.
I will say, listeners, live here, Jack's just put a picture in the Discord that we've got, a little chat thing, which basically just says that his SSD no longer exists, which is excellent. So yeah, so good luck to Jack, who's now got a broken computer. So he won't be joining us today. As mentioned, though, we're going to start things off today. No feature, of course, no Proudy either. Keno, he's not here.
No Proudy, no feature.
Still celebrating Portsmouth's promotion, I think, even though he did record last week.
We've not seen him in weeks.
We've not seen him in weeks. No. Hopefully they'll both be back for our sort of Premier League come down show that'll be happening next week. Now, the interesting thing that we have on the horizon here is that no feature, no Jack, no Proudy, Callum. I thought what we'd do is open it up to the listeners, and they've sent in some questions via @ForTheFansShow on Twitter.
Are we going to do these now, or are we going to do these after?
Well, I think we'll do them now. We'll go through a few now, and then if we can link some of them into talking points later on, then we will do. All
right.
The first one comes from Matt on Twitter, who's just simply asking your funniest moment of the season, either on the show or in the Premier League. So there's a few there.
So funniest moment of the show might be a recent one, because it's quite difficult to remember to think back. But the way in which we spectacularly failed to remember Man City and almost won the feature. That was pretty epic.
That was a highlight. When Jack said Charlie Austin instead of Sergio Aguero, was that a thing that happened? That was a moment that it was just sort of like, well, hang on a minute, you've leapt a little bit there, Jack. You've leapt a little bit. So that was a good one. In the Premier League, I think people actually, it's an interesting question really, because people have been calling the Premier League this year, Callum, a little bit dull. Do you agree with that?
I'm trying to think and there haven't been any. I think about like sort of manager spats and like Alan Pardew headbutting people and that kind of thing. Like there's been none of that this year. It's been quite. I mean, everyone thought that there might be kind of the Mourinho Pep sort of rivalry like they'd had in La Liga. Yeah, but we've not seen any of that, and that, I don't know. Maybe, yeah.
People have been giving it a little bit of a hard time this time. I think after last year, sort of Leicester phenomenon, it was never going to quite live up to that. But we're going into a final day where not much is at stake. Only one thing really matters at this point.
Hence why we're starting with Twitter questions. I will say one thing that David Moyes throughout the entire season has been hilarious.
David Moyes, week 1 of the Premier League season. So David, a tough season this year. Yeah, we're going to be right up against it straight away. Game 1.
He said the other day. I think it was after the midweek game they played when they lost to Arsenal. I think. Could have been. I'm going to get an email. But
it was Arsenal.
Yeah, he was saying in the post-match press conference, he was like, "I told you we were going to get relegated. I told you."
Yeah,
it's like David, credit.
David, you're in charge, mate. You should be stopping that from happening at all costs. It sounds, David Moyes, like you've planned it, my friend. Like you've gone, I told you this would happen and I've been responsible. It's like they got to a point in Sunderland's season where he thought, we're not going to stay up, so I'm just going to prove everybody right and just make sure we're completely bottom of the league.
So Sunderland have been my kind of source of comedy.
They are the funny comedy moment of the season. Arsenal Fan TV had its moments this year. I mean, it's not necessarily on the show, but my word, there's been a few incidents, hasn't there? Well, thank you for your question, though, Matt. Well, move on to another question, Callum. A few interesting ones have come in, actually. I've got one from, it just says dude, which sounds a little bit inconspicuous, doesn't it? At Boxvardo, though, what do the clubs below Chelsea have to do to challenge next season? So he also said it's his favourite podcast when he drives to work. #scenes.
Oh, thank you.
T-shirt's still available. Yeah, go on. What do they have to do?
I mean, we already know that City and United are going to spend a lot of money over the summer.
You'd suspect so.
And almost, that strengthening their squads would be the obvious thing. I actually think that the teams who are currently sort of in that top four, really. Maybe you could include Arsenal as well. They may not need to do as much to sort of to be kind of closer to this Chelsea team, because Chelsea have done this year without Europe, and I think there is another question as well that we got asked, which sort of talks about which teams we think are going to perform well next year in the Champions League. Who's going to struggle the most?
Yeah. Should we leave that question in? We got a question from Omar which says, assuming United win the Europa League, which they're playing Ajax, probably the favourites for that game, and the top four remain, which of the 5 Champions League clubs do you feel will struggle the most with the extra games next year? So it's kind of a bit of both there, isn't it? It's who's going to challenge, what do they need to do challenge, but at the same time, who probably won't do as well. I think these two kind of go together, because I think that Chelsea probably won't hit. I mean, maybe Conte will play another blinder next year and come up with something as innovative as he did in September with the 3 at the back. Yeah.
I think with those extra games, he didn't make many changes to the squad this year, and they had a very settled 11. They're in the Champions League, and he'll have to make changes, and that, as we've seen, can unsettle the team. And so I think Chelsea will probably come slightly lower than the level they've been at this year. I mean, I'll be very impressed if they don't, but I would expect them to drop a little bit lower. You'd expect City, United, etc. to strengthen. And maybe Spurs, if they can maintain this level. Pochettino's come out today and said that he's going nowhere, which I think was the big one. And so maybe if Spurs can replicate the performance of the last couple of years, they'll be even closer. Maybe they could even beat Chelsea to the title.
Yeah. Well, I think the obvious thing, isn't it, that if it's say Chelsea and Liverpool in the Champions League next year, both are going to have to contend with league football and the Champions League. Now, Jurgen Klopp's a manager that's done that plenty of times with Dortmund. The players on the other hand, a little bit tricky, and same with Conte. He's very used to having two fronts to fight on, so that's not going to be a shock. That's not going to be like a shock to the system for either of those two managers. They know how to get through campaigns playing both Champions League and Premier League. And then you look around at the other sides. I mean, you said top 5. Let's include Arsenal in it as well, who have come pretty close to a top 4. May still get in it, of course. We should probably include them in this. That they have to start very fast next year. If Arsenal start sluggish, there's already sort of a bit of a toxic atmosphere at the Emirates as there is. 10,000 fans didn't turn up this week for a game which they needed to win.
Apparently there was 59,000 in there. Yeah.
Yeah, sure there were. like Man City sell out every week, like West Ham sell out every week. I can see the seats, everyone. I can see the seats. I think if Arsenal don't start quickly, Arsenal are going to be under a lot of pressure, so they have to start fast. On the other side of it, you look at the Manchester clubs. We'll come to Tottenham in a minute. You look at the Manchester clubs, though. Guardiola again has a fast start, but he's the guy for me. We'll do sort of a Premier League look back and then look forward after the season's finished, but this season hasn't been good enough by Guardiola standards. He even said, I think, that any other top club he'd been at, he probably would have gone. City are going to be built in his image more so next year than this year. There's still sort of, to me, 5 or 6 players that will be recycled. Like you've already heard that Zabaletta's on his way out. That, to me, is the clearest indication that Guardiola is definitely looking at fullbacks, and he has to look at fullbacks. It's been an area which I think they've looked weak in all season. Beyond that, Manchester United, again, going to have to go out and spend. And not only that, it looks as if Zlatan's not going to hang around for another season. He provided a lot of goals. United haven't scored a massive amount of goals this season, but the goals they have scored, probably a third of them, maybe, have come from Zlatan Ibrahimovic.
I would think so, something like that.
So that's going to need replacing as well. There's obviously talk of players like Griezmann and whatnot, but if they're not in the Champions League, if they don't win the Europa League, that's going to be a huge question mark over what United do in the summer. And then Spurs, of course, again, it's how are they going to cope with Wembley? That seems to be the question, doesn't it? How will they cope with Wembley? They'll be playing on that pitch for every single home game, whether it be Champions League, whatever else.
I'm quite looking forward to it, actually. But
they're going to have to adapt, and that's going to be really interesting as well. There's a lot of talk this weekend, actually, because, of course, now Spurs have cemented that second spot. It's what do they need? That discussion's coming out again. And we've talked about it all year on the show, and I think a few pundits actually agreed with us. I think Jamie Carragher might have been one of them, actually, that said they missed out on Sadio Mane, and that's the kind of player that they need. Someone like that on that right-hand side. Explosive pace that they don't necessarily have from the attacking areas, but certainly have from the fullback areas. So that's going to be interesting as well. All the teams have got little things to work on, which as a manager must be quite exciting to know they've all got little projects. There's going to be the biggest thing for me, Kino, is in the top 6 managers, no one's going to change, which is that's not happened for a while. I dare say. I think there's always been a little change in there somewhere.
I think
so that's going to be interesting.
That's probably a fair one. Yeah.
Shall we?
I will say on Conte, just quickly, you mentioned both Klopp and Conte. They're both used to challenging on both, on a domestic level and in Europe. Conte's never actually done that well. Like even when he was at Juventus, his Juventus side never really. I mean, they certainly didn't get to the point in the Champions League that they've managed to do in the last couple of years. He's never really performed as well in Europe as he has in the league. So that's another kind of unknown, sort of interesting point to look at next year. And I mean, say if Chelsea do have a poor Champions League and drop out early, that may help their league campaign again. So we'll see.
Yeah. Let's move on to another question, though. This kind of ties in as well to sort of the Champions League chat we've had, but it comes from Dylan on Twitter. Why Premier League teams have suddenly started struggling in Europe over the past few years? An English team not making it to the final since 2012. Of course, this year's final is going to be Juventus and Real Madrid. And again, we're not even close, are we? For me, it's just quality. It's just our teams just aren't as good as the other major teams. That's all it is.
We've definitely, we've definitely thought. I think we probably had a question similar and had this same kind of chat probably when the teams were going out in the round of 16, the group stages, like before Christmas. But I tend to agree. And I mean, you only really attract sort of the best players. I think part of it is the Premier League, because of the sort of relentless nature of it, and the way in which there are no matches in the Premier League that I think even teams in the top four can take for granted. I mean, we've seen, other than really Chelsea and Spurs in like 2017 in the calendar year, have been absolutely relentless and haven't dropped points at all, pretty much. Other than that, we've seen a lot of the top teams drop points consistently. And I think when you are having to fight a lot harder in the league on a sort of weekly basis, I think that does affect your Champions League form and your ability to really hit top level, particularly in the group stages at the beginning, when sort of it runs through the autumn into Christmas and it's a very hectic sort of domestic schedule with lots of Champions League games. And I think that does affect English teams. So that's one factor for me. It would be interesting to see if a winter break would make us any better. I mean, we didn't have it before and we did okay.
Yeah, that's sort of my argument, that we had that sort of 6-year period where we had a team in the final all but 1 year.
Yeah,
and it was like, well, we didn't have a winter break then. We just had players like Cristiano Ronaldo and Chelsea in their absolute pomp, and it was like that was kind of why we had the best teams in the world.
And I think that is, I was going to say, that is the sort of the other 50% of it, maybe probably a little bit more, 60%. But you could also maybe say at that point, sort of from 2007 probably until maybe 2012 when Chelsea won it, although that was kind of a bit fortunate.
Yeah.
For that kind of 5-year period, there was a very clear top four. I mean, Man City came in then with the money and sort of disrupted that, and now we have sort of 6 clubs who are all trying to finish in the top four. But for a few years, probably towards the end of like the first decade, it was quite a very solid top four, and they seemed as though they were kind of quite a few streets ahead of the rest of the Premier League, and maybe that kind of meant that they could focus a little bit more on Europe. So I think that's probably 2 parts to it. It'll be interesting to see next year, because we could have 5 English teams, which we haven't had for a while, and you would hope that would
be great,
maximise.
Though. That'd be really good if they all get into the group stages and all progress further. That'd be really, really good. I would quite like to have like 5. Imagine 5 English teams in the knockout stages of the Champions League. That'd just be exciting. I feel
good for the coefficient as well.
Very good. I mean, we need it. My word. I will say just one more thing on that. Like the best players in the world at the moment. Like, we're not the big dogs. We're just not the big dogs in Europe. I know I've kind of
got lots of money, but we're not the big dogs.
Yeah, we've got lots of money, but there's not as much prestige at the moment. I don't think playing for a Premier League side and qualifying for the Champions League, that is kind of the thing. You can win the Premier League, sure, but a lot of the players in the Premier League now are kind of coming to qualify for the Champions League. Whereas if you're at a Real Madrid, Barcelona, Bayern Munich, Juventus, you can probably put in there as well at the moment. Even Atletico, right? You can say, look, we're going to go there. We're not just going to challenge for a league title. We're going to challenge for the Champions League. And at the moment, there isn't really a club. I guess we'll see with Chelsea next year. There isn't really a club in England for the last few years that have looked like they could even challenge for a Champions League. So lots go into it, and I think it's a good question, though. It is a good question. Lots of little pieces to it as well. Something a little bit more straightforward. Luke Sherwinator on Twitter, great name. It's just simply asked. We've not really talked about Stoke this season. He simply asked, should Stoke sack Mark Hughes? Now, you look at the league table, Keno. Stoke have had a very Stoke season, you might say, but find themselves in 14th. They've been finishing 8th a lot, but from around sort of basically from Stoke to Southampton, who are in 8th position, there's 5 points. So it's not that different from what Stoke have done before. Lower than usual, though. Do you think he's been quite lucky to stay in the job this season?
I think this question, I mean, this is when you mentioned this before the show, I was like, yeah, we definitely need to do this because it's a question that kind of digs at a wider sort of issue. I think between those teams, that you've mentioned from Southampton to Stoke, those teams in the middle of the Premier League. I think as well as of like West Brom.
Yeah,
probably less so.
You could probably go, this season: Watford, Burnley, Stoke, Palace, West Ham, Leicester, Bournemouth, West Brom, Southampton. That's a lot of teams that you include in that.
There are a few teams in there, I think, particularly like Burnley, Bournemouth, where Dyche and Howe have done really good jobs, and I think that there would be no question of sort of sacking those managers. But as you mentioned, Watford, Mazzari's already gone. There's question marks over Puel at Southampton. I know a lot of Albion fans personally, and they're not very happy with Pulis. And then, of course, Mark Hughes. So that's 4 there. And I think...
Do you feel at the moment, though, just on that, I will come to Stoke again, but do you think that Southampton and West Brom fans need to have a little bit of a reality check in that sort of way? Because Southampton currently sit 8th. Of course, by the end of the weekend, they could be a little bit lower down. But Southampton, with the changes they go through, like with personnel, to be 8th position, West Brom, who were perennial up and down, weren't they? They were the typical sort of yo-yo team, now sitting 9th position, like pretty comfortably. I've looked pretty comfortable sort of in the top half all year. For me, come on. Like, what are you expecting? Are you really expecting to finish any higher?
I think it's part of the problem with the Premier League today, really. There is a big divide now between, the top 6, and then you could include Everton as well. And then I think there's about a 12 or 13 point gap between Everton and where West Brom and Southampton were sitting in 8th, right? And for those clubs in the kind of the mid-table, it's very difficult for fans to sort of, what is that club for? What are their sort of aspirations? And so I kind of do have sympathy with fans that when their clubs are sort of just kind of meandering in that sort of zone, getting frustrated at sort of the style of play, because when your team probably, you're a West Brom or a Southampton, you're never going to have the resources or the chance to really win the league. Leicester did it, but that's a once in a lifetime. You're never really going to have the chance to win the league, maybe get into the Champions League. There are the cup competitions to aim for, but obviously that's a smaller part of the season and quite isolated, and we've seen that has affected league form in the past. And then other than that, if you don't have the kind of almost the drama of maybe being in a relegation fight to kind of fire you up about your club, what is there to really excite you about the team other than maybe going and watching exciting football?
Yeah,
that's the only thing that you can really hope to kind of go to the ground and enjoy as a fan. So I can understand that, particularly with Stoke, who have brought Hughes in to change the style of play, and it's moved on from Pulis, of course, but by no means sort of fantastic to watch. Very inconsistent. Stoke, West Brom, Watford to an extent. I can understand those fans sort of the complaints. Really, it's really difficult.
It boils down to what the owners actually want. Like, do they want to be a sustainable Premier League side, or do they want more than that? You get the sense
go for broke for a year, spend a lot of money, and try and...
that's the gamble, isn't it? Do you try and force your way into sort of a top 8 position and then make it, like you mentioned before, right? It was a top 4 that became a top 6 because suddenly City were challenging with all the money. Chelsea even entered a top 4 that they weren't really a part of.
Spurs recovered as well from where they were.
And Spurs came back strong as well. Everton have always been on the fringes, sort of, you would say, for the sort of maybe last 10 years now. They've always been there or thereabouts. And then below that, there's a pile of shit, Callum, frankly, propping up the Premier League. Like, I'm not being cruel, right? But like, people say it's been the most competitive year the Premier League's had in ages. No, it hasn't. It's been one of the worst years the Premier League had in ages. There's so little quality. Like, you look throughout the players that are in sort of the bottom half, there aren't a lot of sort of standout individuals that are pulling their team like up on their own. There really isn't. There's just a lot of quite average sides that.
I think that stems from managers as well.
Yeah, I think as a manager, it must be very difficult to know whether you should be pushing to get into the top half or simply trying to avoid relegation. Like, going into a new season, it must be very difficult.
I think that's why teams like, Swansea in the past and Southampton and Bournemouth as well under Howe have been quite refreshing because they've come up and instead of maybe doing what Sean Dyche, I don't want to be critical of Sean Dyche.
Burnley did it the first time, though. Is that what you're going to say?
Well, instead of kind of adopting that very kind of functional style of the Pulis and your Allardyces and Dyche as well now, I think early Swansea, Rodgers, Laudrup, and I'd like to see Clement do that as well, of definitely Bournemouth, they've tried to come up and play with a bit of a fun style of play, and they've been fun to watch. And
well, Southampton did it as well. Southampton were another team that came up.
Of course.
Norwich also did it for a little bit. They came up on the Lambert and played a similar sort of, we're not scared.
It's a little bit more risky though, isn't it? Like we've seen with Howe, he had a little wobble in the middle of the season, come back quite strong. It is a bit risky. It's not as reliable as like a Pulis, let's say.
Yeah.
But I think that is one of the reasons.
Yeah, I think the teams that have sort of played it a little bit too safe are arguably the teams that have gone down as well. I'm kind of looking at Middlesbrough and Sunderland.
Certainly, Borough,
I think they both played it a little too safe. We don't want to concede. And then when they're losing the games in which you can only set up so defensively, right? So when you set up as defensively solid as you think you can, and you still don't win, it's kind of what's plan B. And if you don't have a very good one, then ordinarily in the Premier League you go down, and they've sort of suffered that. Have you got any questions you want to bring to the table? I know you had one in particular you were looking at.
Yes. Josh at Josh+1 asks a Villa-related question, which of course you can chime in on.
I'll do my best I can.
And this has kind of been a thing that has been discussed between fans recently as well. Josh says Villa are quite near the top for wage expenditure. Certainly near the probably top now in the Championship. Now Newcastle have gone up, and have a decent sized Premier League club in terms of the money that we're spending on wages. What do you think the club needs to do to rectify the financial problems, or is it a case of the club making better use of what they have? It's a kind of, like I say, it's been something that I think fans in the last couple of weeks, as we've not really had much football to watch, have sort of woken up to a little bit. And Tony Jarre, the chairman, was asked a few questions about it. We spent, I think, in the last summer, and this was, of course, with Di Matteo in charge, about 50 million quid, I think, in the transfer window.
Yeah.
That was a net spend because we did actually offload quite a few players as well. I think like Gested to Middlesbrough, Clark, we got sort of 6 million for him. And so the net spend was a little bit lower than that, probably closer to 20 million, but still a lot of money for the Championship.
Yeah. And Villa are really like an extreme example of a lot of clubs in sort of the bottom half of the Championship. You look at sort of Forest in recent years have spent quite big money on players. QPR obviously went through a spell. Wolves another one. Of course, Norwich aren't going to get aren't in the playoffs as well this season. Villa are like the extreme example of a lot of these teams.
Well, and I think part of the reason for that is sort of the size of the club and the resources that he does have available. We've had, I think our average attendance this year has been over 30,000, which is more than a lot of Championship clubs can hold, right? And so I think the kind of idea is that we should spend, but obviously those signings haven't paid off this year, or few have, few haven't. I think there'll be some out the door, and Bruce made a lot of signings in January as well. Players like Lansbury, Hurahan, etc. Scott Hogan, who's not paid off, and so the kind of the general feeling is that going into next year, in a year in which I'm not really too impressed with the teams that have come down, and obviously the best two teams have gone up in Newcastle and Brighton. So this is a year that I think we should be minimum in the top six in the playoffs, be looking to go up that way. Yeah. So with that season in mind, I think there's the kind of acceptance that we're going to have to sell a lot of, clear a lot of the dead wood that we still have from the Premier League off our books.
Norwich have just done it. It's funny.
Yeah, it's a problem that affects everyone. Like it comes down.
Norwich and Villa both came down together, carried a lot of the quote unquote dead wood with them. Norwich have brought in Stuart Webber, of course. He was at Huddersfield and did really well with Wagner, and has now come in and gone. These 6 players are off. So you've seen players like Basong and Ruddy. Just see you later, mate. Like.
Released, wasn't he, Ruddy?
Well, I think they all have been. And wage-wise, that could be like the 6 players they've released. It could be around like 150,000 for a Championship team. That gives you a lot of manoeuvrability in the future, like to do things with. I think Norwich and Villa. I think there'll be Norwich fans listening to you, to saying the exact same thing is happening at Norwich, and we need to make sure that it is happening. And it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. I think you're right though. The teams coming down aren't as strong as maybe Brighton and Newcastle have been this season. So it's going to be a lot tighter. There's probably sort of 5 or 6 teams. I think Leeds will want to go again as well and really push for it. Huddersfield, if they don't go up, will be another one.
We'll talk about the playoffs later.
Yeah, Sheffield Wednesday, of course, didn't get through either. So it's going to be interesting. Have we got any other questions, or are we going to move on to?
I mean, we've done a good 25 minutes there. I think that's a decent little section. We'll do some more questions next week in our Premier League wrap up as well. Yeah. So we'll if you've not got answered on from Twitter this week, maybe either email Ben or
at Dr.
stick
Ben
it in
G
your
on Twitter.
iTunes review as well. You can do that, and then kill two birds with one stone.
Yeah. Simon did ask, why does Keno get so much stick? I actually quite like him. That's a response to all the emails. So you might get some more now. You kind of asked for some more, haven't you?
Thanks, Simon.
As I say, if you did ask a question, we didn't answer it. Sorry, but we can't go through all of them today. Right then, let's look through the rest of the football. And Chelsea, have finally won the league since we last recorded. We predicted it may well happen. And it did happen. No final day drama for Chelsea, who have...
There's been so much football.
Conte looked so bloody happy, didn't he?
Yeah.
And you were right as well. You said this would happen.
So...
We'll go through predictions next week, but you said this would happen.
Next week I'm cutting out the audio from the beginning of the season show.
Good.
And we're going to do a little flashback in the middle of next week.
I'm pretty sure I agreed with you, actually. I think it was me and you that said...
We'll see what the tape says.
Me and Jack definitely didn't say City would walk it. Not a chance.
There's been so much football though the last 7 days. There's been a week's worth, and so it started with Chelsea with a fairly routine as they come, routine win against West Brom to sort of descend.
Was it routine though, or was Mitchie lucky to get a goal for them quite late on in the game? It was close.
And it's funny that Batshuayi was the one to score the goal after having
he looked happy as well.
So little in. He did.
At the same time, though, a little bit embarrassed. A little bit like, I don't know if I should have done that.
That's how I felt as well, because, for a guy that's, I think, made 6 starts or something, and sort of 12 appearances this season.
Yeah.
He celebrated quite a lot for a guy that, okay, fair enough, he won them the league, which is going to happen anyway. And then, he really enjoyed it.
It must be quite difficult, though, for a player in his position who doesn't play a lot of football throughout the season, but then has such a pivotal role in just clinching it.
Young guy as well.
He's 23. He's not really young. He's 23, but there's that feeling for me. He had sort of the look on his face like, I've kind of just finished off a job I didn't really have a major part in. He's sort of the person, when you let someone finish off your puzzle and they take all the credit for the puzzle, but at the same time they're thinking, I didn't really put the work in for this puzzle. Mitchie looked like he'd put the final piece of the jigsaw together.
There's a few of those at Chelsea, of course. John Terry thought about getting his kit out.
That was a lovely moment. He kind of thought, shall I? And
then he put his sweatshirt back on.
Everyone's thinking, don't do it, John. But he's become, the fact he's now aware of it ruins it for me. It's not as funny now John Terry knows that he's a bit of a knob.
No.
It's a shame. He might be going to Bournemouth or Swansea or somewhere. That's a strange thing. Why is that happening?
He hasn't played much.
Would you take him at Villa?
He's basically had a lost...
Serious question.
I think I'd rather have Nathan, but no, maybe. Yeah, I think I would. I think most championship teams.
Would you have Champions League winning John Terry at Villa? Do you think you would? Would he fit in with the ideology that Steve Bruce is trying to?
Well, this is the thing. The footballer I could possibly fit in and maybe replace someone like Micah Richards. I'm not sure I'd want John Terry the man in a Villa kit, to be honest.
Fair enough. I mean, hard to argue, isn't it? Who's been your sort of standout player for Chelsea this season? Is there anyone that's caught your eye that's not really spoken about? There's a couple for me that have had no praise whatsoever until now.
I think we might have one. I think we might... it's Pedro, for me.
Oh, no, not who I was thinking. But, okay.
He would definitely be one. I mean, we could sort of go through the whole squad and say that some have been sort of not mentioned more than others. But Pedro's started. I mean, I mentioned at the top about how few changes Conte's made to his starting 11 this year. Pedro's been in there probably as much as Hazard and has been quite an important part of that front three because. Yeah, and a very, very hard-working cog. And I think people forget a little bit with Pedro.
Hard-working cog. Yeah. Pedro, by the way, this is former Barcelona frontman Pedro.
Spinning around really quickly.
He's come to England with a podcast and called him a hard-working cog.
Well, that's what I was about to say. I think people forget how good he was at Barcelona.
That's what
And it was the goal at Everton when, I think people sort of almost kind of sat up and thought, oh, God, that's Pedro. He scored it in the Champions League final.
Hold on a minute. I recognise him. Yeah.
Yeah, and the amount of quality that he has, I think, sort of goes a little bit unheralded in that team, that front three. So he's one for me.
There was a little bit of praise for him recently. I'm not sure where it came from, but Azpilicueta has been talked about 36 starts this year, or 36 appearances.
Every minute
of every game? Or apart from maybe one where he didn't feature?
Maybe this one, I think, up until the Watford game in the week, I think when he made a lot of changes, he played every minute.
Yeah, which is phenomenal, really. You've heard a lot more sort of about Cahill, haven't you, and Louise, but I'm impressed. I'm impressed with what I've seen from Azpilicueta this season. Even got a FIFA Team of the Year card, so he must have been doing well.
You can make the case that he was probably the best defender in the league, sort of from start to finish. He played every game, and was sort of Conte didn't move him around at all really important part of that back three.
Yeah.
And probably, you know, if you're looking at sort of Chelsea defenders of the last kind of 5 years, he'll be up there with maybe obviously Terry and possibly Ivanovic.
I'd say lots made about the defence. Not many people talking about Courtois, who's got 16 clean sheets this season, which is the best in the league. Like, he had last year, of course, all of Chelsea played so badly. He was just kind of a part of that. I think he was injured quite a bit of last season as well, wasn't he? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
But he's played 35 games this year, 16 clean sheets. It's not bad. People talk about Lloris and De Gea. We forget, actually, that Courtois came to Chelsea sort of post playing phenomenally for Atletico Madrid and is a fantastic goalkeeper. And I think people kind of forget that. And there's been moments in games where he's made some saves that, frankly, because of his size and his stature, look very easy. But actually, they are quite simply game-changing saves that keep Chelsea in games or stop Chelsea from conceding late on that you expect from what is, in my opinion, a world-class keeper. I think he's in the top 5 for me.
Definitely. And there are times, I mean, there are always times in the season when you will have, you know, even in a championship winning team, there will be moments when you are under a lot of pressure and you're trying to hold on to either get that 1-0 or to hold out for a point or whatever. And there have been moments that Chelsea have needed Courtois to come through and do that. And he has, to be fair. So, yeah, I agree on sort of top 5 in the world type thing.
Yeah, bit of live reporting here, listeners. We might have Jack.
He's just messaged me
at some
saying
point.
He's not sure whether it will die.
I love that. You told him not to risk it. I said, join if you dare. So we'll see what he does. We'll see what he does.
He's just said, I've ordered a new SSD, so I think he's gone with the latter. He's gone with my option.
Okay, well, we'll see what he does. If it comes and dies, then we don't know. Actually, that will ruin the show, actually, so I don't know.
That's what I said. If he joins and then it goes again,
I'll say, stay away. Don't come. Don't come here, right? And then I'll say no more for the rest of the evening. We'll talk to him later on.
We've kicked Jack off with the phone.
We have. Don't join. You'll mess everything
ruin it
up. Right, there we are. We've dealt with Jack as well as a little bit of Chelsea.
Let's talk about the bottom 3.
Let's talk about the bottom 3. It's confirmed, Callum. They're down completely. Swansea, though, have pulled it out of nowhere. And I'm going to say very openly now, I thought Swansea were gone. Absolutely gone.
Post Bradley, yeah, absolutely. They were bottom of the league for quite a few weeks and took a lot of heavy losses around Christmas. And you just thought that, obviously, Sunderland had been there for the whole year, but Swansea looked dead and buried. And I'm really, really pleased that they've stayed up, because I think of the teams that have got promoted from the last sort of 5 or 6 years, it's been them and Southampton really that I've enjoyed watching the most. I really like the way that both of those teams sort of approach just the game and the way that they're run. And so I was really pleased for Clement. It was kind of bittersweet this year, because I liked both Clement at Swansea and Silva at Hull.
Yeah.
So, you know, one of those really had to go after Palace and Leicester and Burnley pulled away, which was quite disappointing. But I think we'll see Marco Silva back in the Premier League. But yeah, really happy for Swansea.
Yeah, I think lots of people have said on the Premier League table since Marco Silva's joined Hull, basically Hull wouldn't have gone down. Had he been there all year, Hull would have been not only not gone down, but they would have been sort of in the rest of the pile of rubbish that I called it earlier. But like quite comfortably as well. They wouldn't have even been near the relegation zone had he joined.
And when you consider that they started the season with, I think, 13 fit first-team players, and had that kind of state of affairs for the first few months of the season under Mike Phelan, he did a pretty incredible job to even take it to the second last game of the season.
He won 8 games of his 21, which for a team that have gone down is pretty good. I guess if he had had the other 17, I mean, actually he's going to have 22, but if he'd had the other 16, you do wonder whether they've finished. Like, they'd have been okay, you would imagine, which must be quite frustrating from a whole perspective all round, from fans, players, everyone involved. Only Mike Phelan's a little bit like, sorry guys, I tried my best. But no, were you shocked with the way Hull played in the final game of the season? Not saying the final game of the season, the final game of their season, essentially. Now they're down.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I was going to mention, these 2 matches, the Swansea obviously won on the Saturday against Sunderland, which you'd expect them to do. And that really put the pressure, I think, on Hull going into the game on Sunday lunchtime. And it was kind of, you often expect like teams in that kind of in that situation, in those kind of relegation 6-pointers or whatever you want to call them, you expect teams to be really up for it. But there is like always the chance that the pressure can be too much for players as well. Particularly after many of the whole players, the seasons that they've had, and the kind of uncertainty around the club a lot of the time as well, as I just said, at the beginning, it was obviously just too much, and the pressure got to them, and they kind of froze
in quite a big way, quite early on to Ranocchia, where it just sort of went through him almost.
And it was funny because Ranocchia was kind of renowned in Italy for being a bit of like like a Titus Bramble.
But then he came along and everyone was like, "Oh, she looks pretty good.
Great.
What does everyone mean?"
Really good.
And then the one time it matters, everyone's watching. It's like, "Oh, there he goes." I bet he's thinking about it. He probably puts his socks on before that game, going, "God, that's a great season. We're really going to finish this off strongly." And then he's just like, "Oh no, these people in Italy, they'll be watching this." I don't know what that accent is. I'm really sorry that I've done it.
Editing.
It was Italian. It was my best Italian. I'm not saying it was good. It was just my best Italian. For Palace, though, I mean, emphatic. A team that have looked a little bit worse for wears all year. I mean, this is how bad the Premier League season is, folks. Crystal Palace win that game against Hull, 13th now. So, the relegation threatened Crystal Palace are now 13th and could well finish 11th, Callum. That's how bad I think the Premier League is this year. A team fighting relegation. Sorry, let me just reiterate that again. A team fighting relegation with 2 games to go could finish 11th. What more do I need to say? That is how bad the league is this year.
It's close. Man.
Very close. Horrendously close. That's how bad it is. So yeah, not good. But for Allardyce, I mean, he's
done it again.
He's done it again. Everyone kind of expected
Annoyingly,
it.
he has done it again.
Yeah, shouldn't be in football. Should be banned for a year because of what happened with England. But fine, Sam, come along, do your business, and probably get a move to. Where would he go? Stoke next? Do you reckon?
Do you think he'll get another crack at the England job?
I mean, there'll be talk of it in a few years' time. I have no doubt whatsoever. Alan Pardew's well off the radar. It'll be Eddie Howe.
Well, yeah. You see, he Pardew. Oh god, at this time last year, Ben Pardew was in the favourite. Well, after
in the FA Cup final, weren't they? He was dancing his way towards it. So
yeah.
He was loving it.
He is sort of fallen off the bandwagon for the England job.
Well, I will say, that I think Gareth Southgate will be winning the next tournament with England, so there'll be no need for a new man, unless Southgate obviously gets pinched by, I don't know, United at that point when Mourinho's had a bit of an underperforming time of it. Shall we move on to? I mean, congratulations to Crystal Palace, very good performance under a lot of pressure. Hull poor. Let's move on though to Manchester United, and let's more so Spurs, who. We've talked about them a lot this season. Really good year from them. And the way in which they made Manchester United look average is something I honestly don't remember. I've never seen a Spurs team do that to a Manchester United team in memory. I don't remember.
I don't remember any team in the Premier League doing that to a Man United team, really. Even throughout the sort of Moyes and Van Gaal years, they were made to look average at best.
They looked like one of the bottom 12, and you know how I feel about them, listeners. That's how bad they were. Spurs were very good, but United were poor. Not at full strength. I mean, it's worth saying that they didn't have some of their big names. Because
Mourinho would like you to know that, Ben. He would like you to know.
Pogba's not there, etc. But they were still pretty strong. For me, it's a bit of a cop out. Herrera didn't start, Mkhitaryan didn't start, Rashford didn't start, Ibra, Pogba, amongst a few others didn't start. But even so, Spurs in the form they're in. Were they heavy favourites for that game? I don't actually know what the odds were before the game.
I can't. I can't remember. But you would expect them to be.
You would assume so.
Of course, Ben. It was their last game at White Hart Lane. Did you know that?
I had no idea.
Did you know that?
Do you know what? I wish Sky Sports throughout the 90 minutes would have let me know just once that it was the final game at White Hart Lane.
To quote Martin Tyler, eyes right to the future. All that's left is memories.
Okay, we're obviously being facetious. It felt like a funeral. The whole time,
it did.
Goodbye, White Hart Lane. We will miss you. And they pan out, and you can literally see that it's built into the new stadium. And it's like, well, hang on. People sat in part of White Hart Lane can sit in the exact same spot if they want. So I'm sure for Spurs fans, it is quite sad to leave a ground that for all of them, they will have only known Spurs playing there, and for that, there's sort of the memories attached to that. It is quite sad, but it's not like. For me, it's not the same as sort of Upton Park being destroyed.
No,
and being shipped out to a completely new sort of white elephant almost. It looks a little bit like it's not quite the same, but it got the same treatment. I did enjoy the Spurs fans. We've raved about you all year. Give me this. They're bringing out the legends, and I mean Crouch is one of them. I'm just sitting there thinking, come on, it's Peter Crouch. I know he's a likeable lad and whatnot, but this is getting ridiculous.
I liked it when David Ginola came out on Snapchat.
That was,
sort of
to be fair though,
doing a little.
Ginola, I'm old enough, I hate to admit it, to remember Ginola at Spurs.
So am I.
Just,
not Spurs.
We get it. You remember being alive, that's good. But no, at Spurs, I can't think of a player that I'd compare him to now. There aren't many players that play with the same sort of arrogance as he did. I mean,
I remember watching Ginola in the Intertoto Cup for Villa when I was about 6.
There's a. I'm sure. Do you know what? There's a very memorable Ginola run he did for Spurs where he takes on about 15 players. Obviously, probably not possible, but it was
a few of his own team.
It was outrageous. Oh, it was honestly, there was a time where he was the kind of player, right? That if you didn't support Spurs, you'd still watch Spurs to see what he was up to.
I've got a few of them now.
It was that kind of. Well, yeah, it's not too dissimilar, but he was very jinky. Jinky is the word I'd use.
I enjoyed the Spurs fans coming on the pitch and delaying the funeral ceremony.
I don't know why. I don't know why that is a thing that happens. I don't know why.
What the pitch invasion or the ceremony?
They know there's going to be a huge ceremony. Yeah. Why run on the pitch? Like, again, I know it's the final game at White Hart Lane. You're moving about 20 yards.
They want some grass, Ben. They want some grass.
There's grass everywhere. Like, I'm sure they'll probably auction it off. I should say that. They were very quick to move in and demolish White Hart Lane. Did you see that?
They started the next day.
Yeah, no messing about. There was a digger on the pitch. I was thinking, someone did make the joke of, Manchester United's defence haven't left. It's like, oh, very good, very good, like that.
That is good.
I did enjoy, as well as a Liverpool fan, I enjoyed people putting, oh, look, you can see the demolition job at White Hart Lane's already begun. There was just sort of a set of pictures, and then John Flanagan scoring one of them as well, which was really good when he got one of a 5-1 victory at White Hart Lane. I'm going to miss White Hart Lane for that memory in particular. But no, Spurs, I'd say, great season. Followed it up with a 6-1 win against Leicester in midweek.
Well,
Harry Kane's really good.
Goals.
We've been saying this, but Harry Kane's really good.
He's now in Golden Boot pole position as well. He's moved ahead of Lukaku and Sanchez.
And he's missed
with those
30% of the year as well.
Or
whatever it is. How many games has he played this year? I want to look that up before I quote it fully. So he's played 29 this season. So he's missed, well, hang on, he'll probably play one more. So he's missed 8 games of the season so far. And he's got 26 in 29. Oh,
not bad.
English.
Is it?
He's bloody English. Love that.
I know.
Well done, Harry. Hopefully, I really want to see the Spurs team. I know Pochettino seemingly doesn't really give a shit about it, but I really want to see Spurs battle harder in the Champions League. I want to see sort of the best young English players that are at Spurs at the moment. I'm talking sort of Rose, and you've got Ali and Kane and Walker if he sticks around as well. I want to see these boys competing against some of the elite in Europe. And from what we've seen this year, they are good enough to do that. We've just got to see it. Callum. I want to see it happen.
I thought while we're kind of on Spurs, last night, the Leicester game, I don't know how much you saw of it.
Yeah, I saw it.
You saw it, yeah. There was 2 really great goals from Son as well, who I think has been, we mentioned our sort of unsung...
Real Madrid, everyone.
Our unsung heroes for Chelsea.
Unsung, very good.
Well, yes, unsung. He's had a really kind of important year for Spurs because, you mentioned when Kane was out, he filled in for those sort of 5 or 6 games when they needed a number 9. Obviously, they have Janssen, but that doesn't count. He did a good job there, and then has also been quite important sort of in helping them mix up kind of the front 3 as well, and to keep them varied, and chipped in with quite a few goals. I think he's definitely into double figures this year in the league. Which is good, and last night 2 fantastic finishes. I think the second one in particular, where he sort of did the drag back and then picks out the bottom right corner, and his first goal as well with a lovely assist from Dele Alli. So just Spurs being Spurs.
Yeah, really
enjoyable.
I'll tell you, it might not be this year, listeners, but Son Heung-min will be getting his move to Real Madrid, whether you like it or not. Okay, I'm going to make sure we're trying to broker a deal to get Proudy as a goalkeeper in China. I'm also working on Son to Real Madrid.
You should definitely be Proudy's agent.
I would love to be Proudy. I would big him up I'd have to big him up, but I would big him up like nobody's business. But no, I would love to see Son in a Real Madrid shirt. Spurs fans, enjoy him for now because he will be leaving. I'll reiterate that once again. He will be leaving. And on the side of the coin, though, Callum. Oh, Manchester United! There's a big game coming up, isn't there? Obviously, they're going to finish 6th in the Premier League, which for us growing up is still a bit mad to have Manchester United down there. I was quite critical of United on Twitter the other day. I caused a few United fans to be a bit annoyed with me because that tends to be what happens. But I essentially said that I don't like how it's been kind of covered up as Like, okay, let me put it this way, right? As a Liverpool fan, throughout the 2000s, you can imagine that I used to get quite a lot of grief when Liverpool were in the UEFA Cup, as it was then, or winning a League Cup or getting to a League Cup final, where you've got United challenging for titles and getting to Champions League finals and doing
with Roy Hodgson as manager.
Don't even. That was 2010. Never forget. Anyway, I was brought up on a Manchester United fan that was a bit of a dick. Now, I'm sorry, Manchester United fans, you were very good, and you let everybody know about it all the time. There was no second thought about it. We were constantly reminded of how great you were. To now say, well, finishing sixth, winning the Europa League, and getting a League Cup win as well is a good season. No, it's not. It's an okay season. It's about on par. Because for United, you can tell me that the UEFA Cup or Europa League, is a good win. It's a trophy at the end of the day. It's not the trophy.
They've of course styled it into the trophy that they've not yet won, like the sort of missing.
But it's
like piece.
It's not the trophy you want by any stretch. It's not the trophy Jose Mourinho particularly wants on his resume. I can't imagine. Oh, you remember that Europa League win you won in 2017? I think Manchester United fans, to an extent, are forgetting that they're Manchester United. Like they should be. When we talked earlier on, right, about the elite clubs in world football and how that they attract the top players right now. Manchester United are an elite club in world football, but they don't look like one at the moment. They don't even remind you of one at the moment. It is bizarre. So to dress it up, I'm not, again, there'll be some United fans sitting there going, I don't think this is a good year. Like, don't get me wrong. But there are a certain portion of United fans that are dressing this up as, oh, it's been a good year if we get, trophy, Champions League football and a League Cup win. Most people say that's a good season. Most teams would say that is a good season. Most clubs don't have the history and the expectation that Manchester United do. Like, to finish sixth in the league season, they didn't sit down pre-season and go, right, goals this year, let's win the Europa League first and foremost. Like, this is like a luxury backup plan you've managed to forge yourselves. Like, I
think as well, Mourinho sort of the rhetoric that he's used in like the last sort of probably about the last month.
Yeah.
As it's become clear that they were going to struggle to get into the top four.
Yeah.
And we're on this run in the Europa League. The sort of way that he has been sort of almost totally discounting like the league, like the kind of things that he's been saying even before the Spurs game, sort of warning journalists that they were going to have a half strength team out. They weren't really bothered about this game. He told the players not to worry about it. It's sort of denigrating the Premier League a little bit.
For a bit of balance, I should say, Klopp did this a bit last year. Like, Klopp just rested his first team for Premier League games.
But even in sort of, I'm not a Liverpool fan, so I can argue.
I was going to say, I'm not missing the irony, though, for United fans going, hang on a second here, Jurgen was doing this all last year.
Well, yeah, but let me sort of be devil's advocate.
Please be.
Because Manchester United squad is the most expensively assembled squad in Premier League history.
Yeah.
I mean, even the team that they put out against Southampton, in which they stunk the place out on Wednesday night and drew 0-0, that cost over £200 million, that team.
Yeah.
Now, for Mourinho to come out and to say that, don't expect too much from this game, guys, we're not really that bothered. We're resting a lot of players. The league's sort of nothing for us now. I feel is a bit, well, it's very rich to come from him. No pun intended, considering the price of that team. But yeah, there is something that sort of sticks with me a little bit about it. And the wider point that you mentioned about, United's expectations, particularly in the last sort of 12 months, being realigned, it's probably not where they should be. And let's say they do win the Europa League, it would be about par, because if you substitute the kind of Europa League missing piece victory for in the history of Man United, if they qualified in the top four and still won the League Cup, I think we'd be calling that par.
Yeah.
So if they do that,
that's why I'd say it's not a bad season. It's not a bad season, but it's about par, as you say. Like, if you're not going to,
and if they do that through the Europa League, then fair enough. But if they don't win it, then they may have.
If they don't win it, it is one of it's as bad as anything Moyes and Van Gaal did for me. I don't give a stuff about your League Cup win, frankly. Like, I might be saying it differently if Liverpool had won it, but I'll reiterate, like, Manchester United, a League Cup win and finishing sixth in the league, like, that is
all right, Ben. That's enough.
That ain't good, Callum.
That's enough.
Mourinho said Manchester United season will be a success even if they lose the Europa League final, and I know it's a little bit of lip service, right? But he's quoted as saying that. He also said, "We did things."
He'll be calling it strong and stable.
We did things nobody did in this club in the first season. What, score less than so many goals at home? Like, what's he referring to? It's bizarre. Callum is the phrase I'd use. Absolutely bizarre. And I've not been massively complimentary of United this year. I think you've got some good players, but we mentioned it sort of doing the questions at the start. There is another rebuild job there for United. Their squad isn't fit to finish top four year in, year out. It's not great as things stand. Work to be done, and Spurs showed them up, frankly. So we'll see what happens next year. Shall we touch on the old playoffs? There's not really much more to talk about. We'll very briefly touch on what's coming up, obviously this Sunday, but we'll talk about the playoffs a little bit. Sheffield Wednesday looks, as Conte looked happy, Sheffield Wednesday looks sad. Callum,
I love that penalty shootout. I mean, did you see both games, Ben?
Well, I will say Huddersfield's goalkeeper, Danny Ward.
Yeah, Liverpool, isn't he?
He's a Liverpool boy, isn't he? He's going to be there soon. I say Liverpool boy, he's Welsh, but he's going to be. He plays for Liverpool. He's the Mignolet replacement. He's like a young Joe Hart in that respect.
You really think so? I mean, I didn't realise he was that young. Didn't look it.
I think secretly Liverpool fans are very excited about Danny Ward. I think that he will be the future number one at Liverpool. I hope he is as well, because I think he's got the right temperament and he's bloody good as well. So
that's quite interesting.
I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful.
But yeah, on that game, I mean, we'll start with the one.
Just quickly, actually, Kino, on that, there's some Liverpool fans that didn't want Karius to sign because they thought that Danny Ward was ready to be the number two. So, and I mean, to have such a good season in the Championship as he has, you kind of can see why now, I guess. But sorry, go on. We'll kick things off. So
yeah, that the Sheffield Wednesday Huddersfield game was that was the last game of the two, and honestly, the game was, I mean, over the two legs as well, was not too much. There wasn't too much to write home about. I think there was about 5 shots on target for both teams across the whole the two legs.
Yeah.
But the penalty shootout was very enjoyable. There was
just lovely drama. I just love the drama of it.
But there is also something quite cruel to me. I know Huddersfield, obviously they went through, and that was fine. They won the penalty shootout. But for a team that had been, flirting with the top 2 even for much of the season, they'd have, missed out to Wednesday, who had kind of finished well, but sort of scraped into the playoffs, I think, quite late. There's part of me that thinks, that they wouldn't have deserved, that would have been incredibly bad.
This is the playoffs, Callum. It doesn't matter what you deserve. Yeah. Like,
there's no mercy.
There is no mercy in the Championship any playoff scenario. But no, Huddersfield go through then, and they face Reading. Now, I've got nothing against Reading. I just don't think they're as exciting as probably Fulham would have been back in the Premier League. I don't know.
No.
I don't know what it is.
And also a good away day as well. It would have been nice to see Craven Cottage back in the Premier League.
Just nice to see a ground named after a home back in the Premier League. Not enough of those.
Cottage.
No, I do like the Cottage.
Of course, it won't be. It won't be, because we'll either be having Yapstam or David Wagner, which would be quite an interesting addition.
Yapstam in the Premier League is something I can. Do you know what? Reading overall. This is a bit harsh, but I'm a bit opinionless on Reading. But Yapstam coming up against some Premier League managers. Oh, that's going to be.
Yeah.
He would be. I think he would become. We've talked about it before. He would be the hardest man in the Premier League. I'll include players, especially if Zlatan's leaving, because Zlatan versus Stam would have been a contest. But if Zlatan's leaving, then you bring Stam in. I think if there was a Premier League fight, he should be involved. In fact, he wouldn't need to get involved. He's Yap Stam. He could just watch and know that no one's going to pick on me. I'm Yap Stam.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if anyone can rival him. I don't think there's anybody. Nobody at all.
Yeah. Sean Dyche.
Chris Hughton's not having a go, is he? Even though he does look a little bit like the guy out of Breaking Bad, Gustavo Fring. Even he's not going to get involved. He does a little bit. It's not unfair. Similar hair.
Yeah.
That's literally what I was basing it on, really. They're quite short with similar hair. That's all it was.
The Badger.
What about the Badger?
Well, Chris Hughton.
Is that his nickname?
No, but that's what his hair's like.
Or like a little badger?
Stripy
hair. Yapstam hasn't got any hair. Doesn't have that problem. You see, cleaned it, got rid of it. Ruthless. That's what I'm talking about. Anyway,
who do you think will win, Ben?
I think it'll be Huddersfield. I just think Wagner has got the magic potion, whatever that be. There's quite a few teams hoping Huddersfield don't go through because I think they quite like Wagner at their club. Isn't that right, Norwich fans? I think they're definitely looking at him and Stuart Webber combining again. But yeah, I think Huddersfield will take it. Not because I think Reading are a bad side. I just think on the day Huddersfield have got a slightly more X factor than Reading, I dare say. Is that fair?
Yeah, it's interesting because
they didn't blow Fulham out of the water. Do you know what I mean? Whereas Huddersfield typically do that to Wednesday, but they've been resting for like this whole time. Huddersfield have known they're in the playoffs and just resting for sort of about 3 weeks.
Yeah, but I do wonder though. I mean, momentum is so important at this time of the year. Reading finished the season really strongly. I think they ended up finishing above Huddersfield. And so while you know Huddersfield had probably over the course of the season shown more than Reading in their consistency, Reading put that run together, and it's so important in the Championship in those kind of final 10 games.
Reading won 7 of the last 10. To give you some perspective.
And I was really impressed by them when they played us away at Villa Park. During that run, they beat us obviously
3-1. That was as well.
Yeah, really impressed with them in that game. And they look. I mean, they only did I think sort of sneak past Fulham 1-0, but still looked really good. And Huddersfield, it took penalties to get rid of Sheffield Wednesday. And so if you were looking at maybe the form books, you'd maybe say Reading. But I agree with you. I do think that Wagner will win the tactical battle at Wembley, and probably they have the quality to do it. And it will be very exciting to see them in the Premier League next year. And also amazing. It's kind of like Bournemouth when they came up. Like to have Huddersfield in the top flight.
Yeah,
be pretty.
But both teams will need some work. I feel like Brighton and Newcastle are both a little bit more prepared, whereas Huddersfield and Reading. Yeah. I think that the same probably could have been said for Sheffield Wednesday or Fulham, actually, that they would have needed an extra bit of work. And like that's probably evident to the fact where they finished. They didn't finish in the top 2. But it'll be interesting. Yeah. You can blame Norwich, by the way, for the defeat you had at the hands of Reading, because Reading had just lost 7-1 to Norwich.
Yeah, that was right. They just lost 7-1 and then they came and bounced back.
So I guess we'll have to wait and see. Do you want to go deeper? I feel like we don't have our lower league correspondent here, though.
No, should we wait until next week?
I feel like Priority will give you a better roundup, listeners, so we'll wait for Priority to go and talk about it.
Of League 1 and 2.
But it could be Fleetwood. We'll talk about that. It could be Fleetwood, which would be exciting. And it could also be Blackpool, who are on the charge on the way back. So.
My friend is a Blackpool fan, went to Luton, the playoffs game.
Yeah, those playoffs are mad. As I say, we'll talk about the finals.
A lot more exciting than the Championship ones.
Yeah, well, goals galore, Callum. Goals galore.
Yeah.
Right, what we'll do is we'll take a short break, but we haven't got any sort of ad thing in the middle, have we?
We're almost... No, not yet, no. Classic Football Shirts will be back next year.
Yes.
Check the link in our Twitter. We've got new, improved sponsorship, and thank you to everyone that's gone through them this
what's
year,
that? Hold on. We do have another sponsorship. Are you looking for a #Scenes t-shirt? Check out teespring.com/stores/Dr. Benji store. There's a link on his Twitter. Thanks for that.
That money better go for the server cost, man.
Let's not talk to Jack about that, Steve, because you just... so then, Premier League preview.
That's it.
Premier League preview. Let's talk about some things that are happening then. There's only really one talking point, Callum. Everything else is done.
There's the chance of another playoff.
Oh, don't even mention it. On behalf of me and Jack here. So, of course, listeners, Liverpool are at home to Middlesbrough. Arsenal are at home to Everton? Yeah, they are at home to Everton. The one thing for me, Kino, that is useful is that Romelu Lukaku wants top goal scorer. So hopefully he'll have his shooting boots on. I can actually see that game being a score draw. The question is, can Liverpool overcome Middlesbrough? Oh, God.
So let's for hypothetical world say that Liverpool can't. They've struggled against the lesser teams at Anfield this year.
Yeah.
If Arsenal draw 1-1 with Everton, let's say, I mean, entirely possible, and then Middlesbrough somehow, I mean, this is the real sticking point. Middlesbrough somehow score 2.
Not impossible. Not impossible.
Not impossible. We will go to a situation that has never before been seen in the Premier League.
And will never be seen. And will never be seen.
A Champions League playoff.
I can't be doing with that. Is it just one? Arsenal, is it just one game at a neutral venue? I think it is.
It's one game at a neutral venue, of course. Arsenal and Liverpool would then be on the same points, goal difference, goals scored, obviously goals conceded. Everything.
It might be Villa Park.
Would be identical.
That'd be good, isn't it? It might be Villa Park.
That would be great. But of course, Liverpool have already booked to go and play Sydney. Or
of course we
next
have.
Week.
Yeah, of course.
So,
no, but the thing is, right?
They're gonna have to...
We have Keno, but McManaman, Owen, and Gerrard are playing in that game. I think. I'm not joking. They genuinely are.
Are they really?
Yeah, they genuinely are. I don't think we're taking it that seriously. I'll be honest.
Well, they're going to have to cancel those plans because there's a playoff on the way.
There isn't a playoff on the way. It would be the worst thing to happen to me as a Liverpool fan if there is a playoff. That's not that I'm not confident we would win the playoff, right? But Klopp's record in cup finals isn't the best, so I don't want to have to think about that. I just want us to be falling up at half time, and then that'll be that, and there'll be no stress. Arsenal will know it's not possible. They'll take the foot off the gas. And
however, Ben, this isn't the only way that we could have a playoff. It could be between you and Man City, because if Liverpool beat, I mean, this is
if Liverpool win a City draw, yeah, there's going to be another one.
This is more plausible, I would say, than the 2-0 Middlesbrough win at Anfield.
Yeah, City away at Watford. It's not impossible.
So if you comfortably put 3 past Middlesbrough, 3-0, lovely, and Man City do a Man City, which they have been doing many times this season against Watford, with the pressure off, Mazzari's going. If that is a 3-3 draw, then it will be...
I'll be honest though, Kino, that's fine. Like, I'll happily play off for third position. That's not a problem.
Oh, yeah, okay.
That's not a problem. Yeah. The idea of getting fourth, right, finishing fourth, being there all year, and then having to go into a playoff with Arsenal to decide who gets to the Champions League, and then to watch United beat a young, innocent Ajax team, I won't be able to handle it all in 1 week. I won't be able to deal with it, so it'll be awful. But
that is all that's happening in the Premier League.
Yeah,
nothing else.
Sunderland
is happening.
down, Middlesbrough down, Hull down, Swansea safe, Watford safe, Palace safe, Chelsea won the league, Tottenham finished second, Everton a 7th, United a 6th. It's literally golden boot. I did actually. There was something I was watching that
Sky are trying really hard to make this interesting.
I dare say I'm going to shout out another podcast here. I think I was listening to the Ramble late last night, Football Ramble. If you don't listen, it is also a very good football podcast. They said the way that they're going to have to dress this up is they're going to be talking about the financial. The financial implications. There's an extra 1.5 million on the way to Bournemouth. let's hear from Bournemouth. Has there been a goal? Oh, the money's rolling down here, Jeff. Or where it'll be awful. That's what they're going to have to dress it up as.
That would be awful, but very Premier League.
Oh yeah,
the saddest thing, the saddest.
It'll be like best dressed fans. Who's wearing the wackiest costumes? It'll be stuff like that. It'll be, I don't know. It'll be ridiculous. But they're going to have to ham up the Liverpool Arsenal situation as much as possible. I think, do Sky show 2 games? So they'll be showing those games, I assume. On
the last day, they have a number of matches.
I think they have 2 games that they show, and you can pick one, essentially. And I'm confident, right? I am confident. I do think we'll beat Borough, but there's that part of me that's watched Liverpool all season that knows. But we've only lost 1 of the last 10, so we should be fine. Don't draw either. Should be fine. As you say, there's nothing else to talk of. Of course, the Champions League final and Europa League finals that are happening as well. I think, actually, I'm just thinking about this, Kino. There's probably going to be 2 more shows from us this season. There's going to be a post-Sunday come-down show where we talk about the Premier League as a review show, and then we'll probably include some sort of quiz sort of esque feature sort of show post-European finals, I think, is what we'll probably do. Yeah,
and we've also got, we were just talking before the show, might have a few sort of fun bits planned over the summer as well.
Yeah, keep an eye on For the Fans Show on YouTube, youtube.com/ForTheFans Show. We're going to try and upload some little bits and pieces. And of course, we'll be back next year, don't forget, with a brand new, revamped version of For the Fans. Ooh.
Exciting.
Yeah. That is going to bring us to the end here, though. Hopefully, Jack's computer is fixed at some point in the near future. Probably will be back with us again next week. And, Kino, it's been a pleasure to have you on this week.
Nice little two-man mission.
Always prefer these, frankly. If you've enjoyed this week's show, do drop a like on the YouTube video. Let us know on Twitter or leave a review on iTunes. With love, with care.
If you've enjoyed the show, if you've enjoyed this more than the other,
just let us know on that. Yeah, just say this is my favourite combo.
Message, just tweet me and Ben.
Yeah, by all means.
So we know.
By all means. With love, with care from me, Kino, and us at For The Fans. We'll see you again next time. Come on, Liverpool. Do not mess this up. I can't handle it. I can't handle it.